We know you already have the knowledge, and making sure you have the confidence, the tools, and the connections, right? Like to start growing food in whatever space you have available. If it's your front yard, if it's your backyard, if it's pots, if it's a small patio, really covering all of our bases. And right now we're like the cost of living is rising as well as food prices, so now more than ever it's important that we're learning to grow our own food, connecting with each other, sharing seeds, sharing herbs, and just connecting with the people in our community and our neighborhoods. So we hope that by the end of the workshop we'll build community with everybody in the room, knowing that the only way through is together. Leave with the basic knowledge to start growing food anywhere, and leave with either seeds, a seedling, or a planter. So we have these planters that you'll get to choose from in a little bit. I'll start off and I'll pass it to you. So I wanted to zoom out a little bit to kind of like, okay, what is this all about? So we are a part, FoodLink as an organization is a part of a larger regional effort. The vision that we're working towards is an autonomous web led by Central Valley Women of Color that prioritizes healthy communities and the mutual care of all its residents and ecosystems. The mission for this larger regional effort is to create, implement, and support food sovereignty and land back efforts in the Central Valley using the frameworks of agroecology, permaculture, indigenous wisdom, and place-based solutions beyond capitalism that bring health to the land, relatives, and all of our relations. And the guiding values for all of our work is abundance, food sovereignty, land back, care for all living beings, respect for the earth. And this is like the vision of what we're leaving behind and what we're working towards, right? So just wanted to like ground that in like the work that we're doing. There are also, it's happening in Fresno, it's happening in other counties. So just wanted to ground in that, like zooming out, and then like what's happening here in Tulare County, and this one, a little bit of that.
Yeah, so as you may know, FoodLink's been around for quite some time as a nonprofit food bank and serving Tulare County, and part of our work at FoodLink is food systems change. So our goals are to, as Brenda said, like equip folks with the materials, the resources that they need in order to grow. Like we said before, like y'all probably know a lot about growing, and if not, we'll share here, and all of us will help teach each other. But what we do as the Deep Roots program, we have a number of offerings, which you can see on that flyer, but we support folks. There are different like tiered support, so like with materials or with knowledge, or however folks need support, we meet them where they're at, is generally our goal. We prioritize folks with the most need, so whether it's low-income folks, if it's people who just don't have clean water. We have different ways of growing hydroponically with like really very simple, basic standing water hydroponics that really only need like a gallon of water to grow a whole head of lettuce. We support with either like patio gardening or like growing food on your in your windowsill, in your house, in your backyard if you have it, in your front yard if you have a little spot in your front yard, wherever makes the most sense. We'll meet folks where they're at. We also help with bigger projects. We've been building a greenhouse with somebody recently, so it's like a very large scale of like what we do. But we really are, one of the values is growing together. So making sure that we are like supporting each other as we all grow.
And with the commitment of food sovereignty, which just means being at every step of the food on our plate. So like I grow the tomatoes, Tabitha's growing the peppers, right? We like get together, we like make a salsa, right? And just like at every point, like if it's a salad, if it's whatever, what are we sharing, and how are we all a part of building really strong, healthy, sustainable local food systems amongst each other in our neighborhoods? Or like, oh, like I know Kevin, he's growing really great rosemary right now. It's like, it smells really good. And how can we make food and medicine out of the connections that we're making with each other, right? We know we can't do everything alone.
So one of the, like Brenda and I at the beginning of last year took a permaculture design course, which is, permaculture is really just a new word for old ways. It's basically indigenous practices that we are like relearning, and many people might know, like Brenda was saying, like from their grandparents or their parents, but didn't really have language for it necessarily, or maybe got away from that, but we're returning to those practices. So some of those practices are like companion planting. So what plants grow together to help them either grow better and stronger, or what plants like don't like each other. That's an important one to know. But also like help with pest management. Different plants can help with, so you don't have to use as many fertilizers and things like that.
And yeah, we'll start with that's like the perfect segue to start with the basics, which you all probably already know. But we really want to make sure that if you're living here, if you're living anywhere, you're like, okay, actually I'm moving to San Diego, I'm moving here, or my grandmother wants to start a garden in Virginia, right? Whatever it is, or if you're helping other people start a garden, these are the basics that you like can Google, and you're good to go to grow food, to grow herbs, to grow anything, anywhere. So knowing your hardiness zone, it's sometimes called the growing zone. And it's a map that's been developed by the USDA, and it separates the U.S. into regions based on low winter temperatures. Here in the valley, it's zone 9B. So this is useful because you can just Google like zone 9B spring planting, fall planting, right? And it can give you a list of all the things that grow. And then from there, you can be like, oh, I want to grow tomatoes, or I want to grow kale, or I want to grow onions.
Like, when should I plant them? And
Yeah.
They'll tell you like, okay, you can start planting at this time. And sometimes here, 9B seems like really high, and a lot of the times I've noticed that like folks say start it later than we actually need to start it because temperatures are rising and things are changing. So I mean, it's all sort of a balancing act to figure it out, but
Yeah.
they have the basics like that help tell you when to do what.
And it's tied to the first and last frost date, which is really important to know. So these dates can guide when to sow directly in the ground, which should be after the last frost. For most plants, and when to start growing indoors. So now is the time to start growing indoors. The last frost for this area is going to be March 7th. So you want to start things 6 to 8 weeks beforehand. Y'all probably already know this, but just a good reminder and good to know. And all of this is tied to designing your space. So we heard some folks don't have a lot of space, or maybe you're like, okay, wait, like my mom has a big backyard. I could grow some food there. And just listening and observing the space that you are in. Where does the sun rise? Where does it set? Where is there the most sun? Where are the shady areas? If you want to grow watermelons or pumpkins, they take up a lot of space. So kind of getting a sense for what space do I have? What do I want to grow? What's growing right now? And kind of like step by step by step, like making your list to be able to design what space you have to grow.
Yeah, I mean, some of the like options, and we can talk more about like what do y'all use to like start seeds in, because we have had a lot of trouble finding like the little pots that they like sell seedlings in, and so you'll see like we went to the dollar store the other day and just bought cups because that was what worked, and cut some holes in the bottom, and that worked. Or like old like berry containers that you get from the grocery store can work because they already have holes in them. Or like, do y'all have anything that you use to like grow things in?
Egg cartons.
Yeah, I was gonna say egg
Yes.
cartons.
Yeah, that's good. And really, we want to hone in and like you don't need anything. You don't need money. You don't need anything to start. You have everything. Just like when you plant a seed and you give it water and the conditions are perfect and it sprouts. Like just like seeds that have everything they need to bloom and thrive, we have everything we need if we just look around. Like the cardboard, the Amazon packages, the egg cartons, the eggshells, right? We have everything we need already, and it's just about getting creative and seeing how all of these things around us are gold. So this is the basics part 1, and then the basics part 2. What's in season, which I talked about, combining the words we learned today. I had no idea what these things were called. I was like, how do people know? Like, what do you put into Google?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really big part of it too. And we talked about that. Companion planting, it's a practice in which plants that are beneficial to each other are planted together. And most foods that taste really good together grow really well together too. So we have an example here, tomatoes and basil. So basil helps with greater yields. It repels flies and mosquitoes. And then you would also plant marigolds, which repels nematodes. And then if you're like, okay, wait, I want more veggies. Other things that grow really well with this are carrots, asparagus, celery, lettuce, parsley, and spinach. So depending on how much space you have, right? Getting away from like the monoculture, like we drive around the valley, we just see rows and rows and rows and rows and rows, and those environments are really vulnerable to like pests, to being eaten, to climate. If like one of them gets disease, they all die, right? So how do we think about like growing things in a polyculture way? So okay, I have this space, I'm gonna put my marigolds like one in the front, one in the middle, one in the back, and then that's gonna repel the pests. And like my tomatoes are gonna get this big, so they're gonna go right here in the front. Or like carrots like grow underground, so they're gonna be right here, so the tomatoes have space. And really being grounded in the space that you have to grow, what you want to grow, and thinking about how it's gonna grow is important for companion project. Anything to add for companion project?
We have the sheet in front of you. It's if you flip it over, it has a lot of things that grow well together, and then also things that don't grow well together. So certain things will actually either take up too much space in the same, like their roots. Well, it's the white sheet. Maybe not everybody have it. I don't know if Tom has it.
Oh, I got you.
But like we said, like some things will inhibit each other, or they'll take up the same amount of root space. But like carrots and tomatoes are good because carrots go all the way down and the tomatoes go up, and so like they're taking up different areas of space, so they're getting nutrients from different areas within the garden, like different depths.
And a common one is like corns, beans, and squash that like a lot of us know about, and the ways that in which like those three are really well known as the three sisters, and the ways that also they grow really well together. With like the corn, it gets really tall, and then the beans like trellis up the corn, and then the squash or pumpkins take up the space at the bottom, like that's where they grow, and then as the leaves fall off, it becomes mulch. And then beans are also nitrogen fixers. So, and there's more to that guild, that's what it's called when like things grow well together, like a guild. Shout out to Dungeons and Dragons. And then our last step in the basics is to harvest and share. So when we like just share your abundance with your neighbors. So if that means like I have like an abundance of tomatoes or my peppers are doing really well, there's such importance in sharing that or inviting somebody over to come harvest with you. And even the seeds, when something what is it called, when they bolt, like saving those seeds. And then sharing those seeds, because we've had seeds just go bad because they're like it's been a year, but it's been 2 years. They're just sitting there. So
4 years, 5 years, 1 or 2 years usually is fine.
Yeah.
4 years, 5 years, 6 years, they might not germinate anymore.
Yeah. And that could be like the difference in like between like for me it's meant the different like my friends sharing food, like a big squash that just got really big. She's like, I'm not gonna eat this. It fed my family for a week. Like we were eating like quesadillas out of squash, we were eating like all sorts of things at a point where like we really needed it. So you never know what other people are going through, but also like just sharing abundance and being rooted in abundance brings in more abundance of like, oh my gosh, those seeds you gave me that you didn't get to plant, like I brought you a pie or I brought you this. So that feels like a really important basic to share with you all. So kind of talking a little bit more about this, we've had a hydroponics workshop. We have home gardens that we support, and one of them grows using like both in soil with raised beds, but also in hydroponics. So wanting to also think about like maybe I live in an apartment, maybe I live in a mobile home, or like I live in a trailer park, or I just don't have a lot of space, and that's real, especially with the high cost of living and rents going up. So we get creative. We also had a lot of folks from Tulare say like, well, they still charge us for water. We don't have clean water, and we get water deliveries. I had a garden, and now it's dead, and we can't afford food. So we had a hydroponics workshop, like Jenna mentioned, and with a bucket, a gallon of water and seeds, you can have lettuce the whole year.
And a little bit of nutrients.
And a little bit of nutrients. So we had a workshop, we provided folks with all of those things. We had like a packed room, and everybody took some lettuce, bok choy, the leafy greens, and that was really beautiful. So how do we get creative about where we live, how we live, and how we can all live better? Because we all can have everything we need if we all give everything we have. Janet, do you want to talk about vertical gardening?
Yeah, so when I was living a little down south, I had just a very small apartment and a patio garden, and we brought some bamboo poles. So we've got some peas over here that if you want to plant, we can stick a bamboo pole in it and they'll like grow vertically. There are ways of just like tying poles together and creating little trellising mechanisms out of just what we have around the house. Like maybe I have like an old those things you hang clothes on that are just like mobile. You could turn that into a trellising area by just like tying like a couple of, even with clothes hangers, it could be really creative to make space for things. There's also ways of like using old gutters to grow strawberries in. I've seen a lot recently. And cutting them down and putting them on the wall, or pallets. We have so many pallets at FoodLink. So like turning those on their side and putting a little bit of cloth, stapling a little cloth in, and then you can grow in the little slats of the pallets. We built like out of a little bit of wood and pegboard on the bottom and some plywood. We built like a tiered little garden thing. So there's a lot of different methods to growing on a patio or in small space. So hydroponics is an option, but also just like getting creative with how you place plants and just making sure sun is the most important thing to like figure out where your sun is. And I lived like on the east side, so it was really kind of difficult. I had a lot of trouble, but I did grow a lot of really yummy stuff too. So it worked pretty well.
And just to vertical gardening, I know, so you're like, oh my gosh, like I saw the trellises, they're at Lowe's, they're $100. You don't need that. You don't need that. You could get really creative, pick up things from the side of the road, old pallets. We also have a home garden that uses like just old shirts. She like cuts them up, and if her vegetables or fruits get really heavy, she just kind of ties it. And like getting creative about how with the things that we have around us, we can set up structures to support our plant relatives in the ways that they like take care of us and support us. And then small space gardening, and here's like a little example. If you see, everything is in pots here. Everything is in pots, and it's arranged in such a way where like you can trellis, and it just like taking really good care of your tomatoes. So making sure you're pruning at the right times, making sure they're getting water, enough sun. So even if you have a small space, like thinking about like pots, thinking about your herbs in pots and placing them like in the best areas where if you can't do the companion planting guild, like the marigolds, the nasturtiums, like all of it together, how can you grow it in pots in ways that it can have the same effect in your small space to protect those plants?
And a lot of my stuff died on my patio garden. Like, you have to, one thing I learned from that was just like, try again. Was like, yeah, that one didn't work, so that wasn't the right spot for it. Maybe I'll try it over here in a different spot, different amount of sun, different amount of water. Maybe I gave it too much water. So there's always like, it's just always learning for me.
All right, so now we're going to transition.